Alright, this video has truly been a long time in coming, and I know I promised to several of you it would be made sooner, etc. But I'll end up explaining why it has taken so long to do this. So let me start off here with this. The behavior and the acceptance by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I got to be careful how I say this for YouTube censors. I'll just call it the German Socialist 1930s, 1940s government. You can think of one symbol that represents that government, can't you? That government, their acceptance and their behavior during that government's regime is absolutely deplorable. So the research for this video it's been really going on. It's actually been done for nearly 2 years. And when it was done, because I was reading some books and magazines, etc., I wanted to find some original German literature. And one of them is Der Adventbote. And you can see here, this is just one copy of the magazine from 1925. I was looking for specific Der Adventbotes because of what they had in them. And then I would do whatever I had to do to have someone translate it for me and show the English and the German, etc. I've been searching for these things for several years, just can't find them. Which is, even on the Adventist archives, when they have archives in other languages, they don't have these. I wonder why. We'll know as this video progresses why. Because they don't want it to be known. Because you guys know what I like to do in these videos. I like to show you original content. Well, this has been extraordinarily hard to get a hold of. Well, so what I ended up doing, based on, and a hat tip to my friend in Australia who cannot make his name known because the Seventh-day Adventist in his, I'll just say little town, big town, small town, or village will get violent with him and his close family members. Yeah, Adventists get violent. So he can't come out and publicly say things, but he's the one years ago that directed me in this area, and I believe he's the one that actually recommended this book to me here. This is a British historian. Look with me here on screen. I took a photograph of the cover, the spine, the title page, and you can see the name that shall not be mentioned, state, and the new religions, 5 case studies in nonconformity by Christine Elizabeth King. She was a fantastic source. And when I got done finished reading this book and all the 5 religions in this socialist German regime, I wanted at least this one quote, which you're going to see later. It's from a 1940 Seventh-day Adventist publication called Morning Watch. I was actually able to get hold of her. I kind of was guesstimating her age. I'm thinking she's in her late 80s, early 90s. I'm not even sure she's alive. Well, I did find her, and she did write me back, and I'm so grateful to her for doing that. Because I asked her to look at her notes, because I wanted this one particular thing. You're going to see it here near the end of the video. And she just said, I'm sorry, I just don't have my notes anymore. Because you can see the book was copyrighted in 1988. So this video here is really on the basis of what I read in this book, which is 5 historical groups and how they fared, how they did in this German socialist World War II regime. Sorry I have to go and say all this stuff, but you understand how YouTube is these days. The groups that she does in this book here are Christian Science, Latter-day Saints or Mormons, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, a group called the New Apostolic Church, which is really the Irvinites out of a guy named Irving in England, and Jehovah's Witnesses. And here's the grand results. The Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, absolutely the best. They just sailed through this. No persecution. Everything was just fine. And the worst, Jehovah's Witnesses. This author stated in her book, she had a very difficult time getting Seventh-day Adventists in Germany to talk about why you guys did what you did. And why did you take the pro-government positions to this German socialist government that you did? And she said they just did not want to talk. They just clammed up on here. And what she says in her book is every one of those religions I just mentioned, they all compromised everywhere except for the Jehovah's Witnesses. The Jehovah's Witnesses were sent to prison camps and killed. Why? Because they refused to support this evil government. And for their recognition, let me say, of fighting against this evil government, when they went to the prison camps, they were awarded a triangle. Now you know why I have this purple triangle on the wall behind me. That purple triangle was worn by a Jehovah's Witness in Auschwitz. And whether that Jehovah's Witness made it or not, I don't know. Only this socialist German fascist regime had a series of triangles that they identified peculiar troublemakers. And the only triangle awarded to a religion was the Jehovah's Witnesses. And so let me say this, there's a reason why Seventh-day Adventists don't have a triangle. Because you weren't a problem. You actually supported the government. You did pretty good. Matter of fact, the LDS did the best, you guys did second best, according to the book and the historical citations, that is, in this book. So this book, let me tell you what, and she tells us, as a good historian, she said, here are my sources. My sources are, well, they're government records in the original languages from this World War II German regime, press reports, legal papers, and eyewitness accounts. And then she goes on to say that this one particular individual who was in charge of this German socialist regime, okay, whose name shall not be mentioned, really declared himself to be God's agent. You couldn't go to one of his rallies or events and not have the feeling you were attending a religious event. Adventist, who supported this, by the way, the whole time. And this regime during World War II thought that the Old Testament was far too Jewish. You couldn't reference it. And by the way, Seventh-day Adventist, in this book, and this is something that I didn't know, this particular important but evil person in history who was in charge of this German regime never renounced his Catholic faith. He may have renounced it in action, but he never renounced his Catholic faith that he grew up with. And by the way, there's whole pages in here on all the religions that were banned during this horrible portion of history. And you know whose name doesn't appear on the banned pages? Seventh-day Adventist. But there's dozens and dozens and dozens of religious groups, big and small, some tiny that we've never heard of because they just existed in small house churches there in Germany, were banned. SDAs suffered little to no persecution. They basically sailed through this. And if I remember right, their church grew during this. Isn't that a wonderful testimony, Seventh-day Adventist? And by the way, the Seventh-day Adventists claim to be ignorant of, well, the kind of camps that these people wearing purple triangles went to. We didn't know about them. I'll have just a little more to say on that later. Let's start with a little history here that I got, again, from this book. Great book. I mean, I can highly recommend this to you. Get it and read it. It's kind of hard to find, and if you do find it, it might be a little more expensive. Could be in the $75 to $150 range, should you even be able to find one. But I think it's definitely worth the read. So Adventists arrived in Germany in the 1880s. And then shortly thereafter, like 40 years, we could say, 35 years, World War I started. Seventh-day Adventists in Germany enlisted in the German army in World War I. And then the American General Conference came out strongly against those Adventists that did that. And they condemned them. And a lot of those Adventists said, hey, we're just simply fighting for our country. We're fighting for our towns. And the American General Conference said, we don't care. We don't do that. So these German Adventists broke off from the Seventh-day Adventist and formed their own called the Reformed SDA in Germany. Now, the General Conference SDAs adored this German leader who rose up in World War II. And Adventists are, well, let me say, quoted as saying and writing in their literature, the people need a good, I don't know, how do I say this without saying it, but there's a German word starting with F and ending with R when they talk about this German leader, der, and it starts with that. And the Adventists are saying, we need a good one of those. And they liked him too. You know why? Because this guy didn't like tea, coffee, alcohol, meat. He was a vegetarian. Like he enjoyed the health message. There was a particular town in Germany, and I'm going to say the name wrong. I'm looking at it here. Friedenstau. This town, which was an Adventist town, voted 99.9% for the political party of this German leader. 99.9%. Way to go, Adventists. Now this German regime and leader, as they're kicking off World War II, starts invading some places around them, and one of them was Austria. And so, because Austria was German-speaking peoples, they went into Austria, conquered it, and there were a lot of Seventh-day Adventists there, and the Seventh-day Adventists were so happy because we are dedicated to this. There's that name again, der, and it starts with an F, and they said, we're dedicated to that leader. Way to go, Adventists. And by the way, Adventists were loyal German socialist members and even saluted the, well, German socialist flag, as you can kind of see here in a picture. This kind of activity happened. Adventists refused to condemn this guy's racism. Matter of fact, and by the way, the one reason why the Latter-day Saints or the Mormons were so accepted into this regime is because of their racism and their word of wisdom. Word of wisdom in Mormonism is health message in Adventism. So, I mean, I have a book somewhere around here called Word of Wisdom. It's the health message of the LDS Church. So there was a lot of aspects of the LDS Church and their health message, which they call, again, Word of Wisdom, and which got them just so good into this socialist regime, as did, well, the Seventh-day Adventists. But the Seventh-day Adventists refused to condemn the racism, and racism was rampant in this regime. I got accounts of Seventh-day Adventists throwing Jews out of their churches. And I'll have a little more to say on the racism there, whether it's Jewish or against people who weren't, well, Aryan, let me say. Adventists so compromised their belief. I couldn't believe this when I read this in the book. Because this German regime liked nothing that was Jewish. So, well, the Seventh-day Adventist Church has a lot of Jewish things in it. They call it the Sabbath. We observe the Sabbath. Well, this socialist German regime came down to them and said, you got to fix that. And they said, no problem. We Seventh-day Adventists can change the Sabbath. We won't call it the Sabbath anymore. We'll call it a day off. Isn't that great? Adventists are just, they're so easy to cave. Here's the big bad Seventh-day Adventist. Oh, the Sunday law's coming and we're going to stand up against it and we're going to die in persecution because we won't give up the Sabbath. But yet when it actually happened, and it happened in the 1940s, when this socialist regime came to you and said, you know, you better be changing this stuff. They said, no problem, we'll change it. We'll get rid of that word. We don't say that word anymore. That word doesn't exist. We're going to call it a day off. Seventh-day Adventists are just unbelievable compromisers. Here's something else they did, which was most evil. They supported the sterilization to protect the racial purity of the Aryan race, and to protect and for sterilization of whatever an undesirable was, or poor people, and you can see an example of that here in this photograph. Seventh-day Adventist parents encourage their children to join, I'll just call it a youth program. Before it was actually mandatory, by the way. They were encouraging their own children to, well, suit up in the appropriate uniform and join the movement. Adventists, as they do today with ADRA, and they did then in Germany, had large social welfare operations. But there was requirements by this German socialist regime, and that was, you better not help Jews, and you better not help undesirables. And the Adventists said, No problem. We've already compromised on the Sabbath. That doesn't exist anymore. Oops, did I say Sabbath? I mean day off. And yeah, by the way, we won't help those Jews, and we won't help anybody that you call undesirables. The Adventist literature, like I showed you that picture of Der Adventboot, was full of praise for this particular German man, this leader, and his ideals of the pure Aryan race, and the value of not polluting the race pool, and of almost in terms of actually breeding program to help foster this superior race, and Adventists were all in on this too. Now this government, this German government socialist regime was really skeptical of all religions all the time. And Adventists were under the microscope off and on throughout periods of history. And they really didn't like the Adventists nor the LDS because they were both very uniquely American. They didn't trust the American, because they knew the Americans were going to enter the war sooner rather than later. So what the Seventh-day Adventist leaders did is, the Seventh-day Adventist leaders in Germany told their people, hey, comply with this German socialist nationalist government, even if that meant abandoning some of our religious practices. Just comply and get along with them. Adventists are such cowards, right? They like to say, oh, we're going to stand up for the Sunday law. And then when things actually happen, they just cave. And like that. An event happened in 1933. There's a one-word phrase we can use for this, the secret German police of the time. It starts with a G. This group ordered the confiscation of all Seventh-day Adventist church property. The General Conference and the German leaders freaked out and panicked and got legal support and legal help. They made an appeal to this German government and said, hey, look at what we've already done. We got rid of this Sabbath thing. We have our welfare groups, and we don't support the Jews. We're good little members of your government, and we support the Aryan race. We're just good little members of everything that you do. And they said, look at us. And then they said this. It's not us you should be concerned about. Not us. We're loyal supporters of everything you do. But you know who you should look at? Look at this group over here, the Reformed Seventh-day Adventists. They aren't loyal to you. Wow. You know what this led to? This led to that one word that starts with a G and ends with an O. This secret German police outfit started investigating the Reformed Seventh-day Adventists. And you know what they ended up doing then? The Reformed Seventh-day Adventists were sent to concentration camps. And they died, just like those people there, wearing the purple triangle. Seventh-day Adventists, trying to save their own heinies and take direction off, or take scrutiny off themselves, pointed a finger at Seventh-day Adventist Reformed and said, go look over here. And they sent these people to their deaths. Seventh-day Adventism, you've got blood on your hands, and you are murderers. When I read this portion of this whole account in this book, I was literally taken back. This is one of these books I read while I had a good block of time sitting on an airplane and reading. I could not believe it. Seventh-day Adventists, you are murderers. You say we are they who keep the commandments. You are murderers. You sent these people to concentration camps to suffer the fate, just like the Jehovah's Witness in the purple triangle right behind me. So in 1935, military service becomes mandatory. A lot of the SDAs join up in, non-combatant roles. And actually the SDAs told their members, you can wear your German government socialist uniforms to church even. I would just love to have some pictures of that. Some Seventh-day Adventist churches with their members all adorned with the symbology of this German government all over their uniforms and in their churches, because it was there. Now, combat exemptions were done for this German socialist regime, not on the basis upon which church you attend. Like, oh, I belong to the Seventh-day Adventist church, therefore all members are exempted. They didn't do that. They talked to each member individually. So you didn't get an exemption based on your church. You got an exemption based on you. And some Seventh-day Adventists got exemptions and some didn't. And some didn't get exemptions and they said, well, I'm not fighting a combat role. Some did get exemptions and were given non-combat roles. Some didn't get exemptions. And when they turned down combat, they were either sent to camps, they were sent to mental institutions, they were sent to prisons, etc. So some Adventists did indeed go there. Now the Reformed Adventists said, no, we're not joining you in combat, no matter what, combat or no non-combat. We don't support your regime, which is very different from the General Conference American Seventh-day Adventists, who supported everything about this regime. And these Reformed Adventists who turned that down, well, they went to those camps. They went to mental institutions and they went to prisons. One of the most horrible documents I read is this April 1940 Morning Watch calendar. It was a calendar produced every year called Morning Watch. The verbiage printed in this is so clear of the support of this SDA church for this horrible, evil regime. It's astounding. And I kept finding this because everybody recognizes what it is. I found it, of course, in this book. I found it all over Spectrum magazines that I was looking at. I was even doing research as I was reading this book for other books that may have covered the same content. And I kept stumbling across this other book with a very odd first and last name I was not familiar with. It didn't look like it was a Seventh-day Adventist book. I ended up buying the book. Here it is. It's actually by a Seventh-day Adventist. And he's actually, at the time he did this, I don't know if he still lives here or not, but he's in Loma Linda. He's a local guy to me. But this is not a Seventh-day Adventist publication. It's published by, does it even tell me? Oh, Macmillan and St. Martin's Press. It's a secular press. So here's a Seventh-day Adventist writing a book, and I know why he did this secular and not Seventh-day Adventist, because he's very critical of the church. He's got lots of chapters in here about lots of human rights violations of Seventh-day Adventists. Rwanda, other things. He did a whole chapter here on Seventh-day Adventists and this German socialist regime. I actually wrote him, and I said, hey, why don't you tell me why you didn't publish your book on official Seventh-day Adventist press? He never, ever wrote back to me. So isn't that interesting? So every source that I found, this one included, had that 1940 Morning Watch calendar text in it. And what I want to do is I want to read it to you. And I want you to see it. And I don't want you to see it from my British, Church of England historical author. No, we're going to read the Morning Watch account from this book, published by a faithful Seventh-day Adventist. I just think that's appropriate. And while I don't like reading online, this is just extraordinarily important. So let's read this 1940 April Morning Watch. Let every single word and testimony of this sink in. Look at what these Adventists are telling us. Let's begin here. So here it is. Morning Watch, calendar, 1940. Trust in his people has given the strength to carry through the fight for freedom and honor of Germany. The unshakable faith of A.H. allowed him to do great deeds which decorate him today before the whole world. Are you sick yet, by the way? Let's continue reading. Selflessly and faithfully he has struggled for his people. Courageously and proudly he has defended the honor of his nation. In Christian humility, did you catch that? Mr. A.H. here, in Christian humility, at important times, when he could celebrate with his people, he gave God in heaven honor and recognized his dependence upon God's blessing. This humility has made him great and his greatness was a source of blessing from which he gave for his people. Only very few statesmen stand so brilliantly in the sun of a blessed life and are so praised by their own people as our F. Now remember, these are Seventh-day Adventists writing this, believing this. Next sentence. He has sacrificed much in the years of his struggle, and he has thought little about himself in difficult work for his people. We compare the unnumbered words which he has issued to the people from a warm heart, and seeds which have ripened and now carry wonderful fruit. Did you catch all of that? I would say go back and read that again. What we just had communicated to us here was first of all shown by a faithful Seventh-day Adventist who is recording what Seventh-day Adventists believed of this evil German socialist leader. They are just gushing over him. This is God's remnant, people. I want you to see here what this author then says about his church. Look with me here. So on page 21. Although some individual Adventists apparently resisted the temptation, he's quoting somebody here, an historian. He says, he has shown from contemporary publications no active official opposition to the inhumane regime seem to have existed, nor even to have been permitted amongst Adventists. Seventh-day Adventists, even by the admission of a faithful Seventh-day Adventist, admit there was no official pushback to this evil regime that did these things behind me at all. Matter of fact, you escaped it with little persecution. You are an utterly shameful, wretched church. In summary, the SDA church totally compromised their beliefs and biblical values. Forced sterilizations, racism, through the continued purity of the Aryan race, Jewish discrimination in their equivalent to ADRA of course the Jew and whoever was an undesirable. They sent the SDA Reformed to prison camps, right there next to these guys, to their deaths. You got blood on your hands. Most disgusting. I said earlier that our author here recorded that the German SDA said, we didn't know anything about the prison camps. Well, let me tell you what I know about the prison camps. That when these people were being rounded up in the mid to late 1930s, everybody knew in Germany knew where they were going. They were being rounded up and put in prison because they had purple triangles. And you want to tell me that the German Seventh-day Adventists didn't know what was happening to another religion? No. There's a reason why I call you guys lying commandment keepers. Because you are lying commandment keepers. You knew. The American General Conference never condemned the German Seventh-day Adventists and their actions. They just went along with it. Remember the Adventists? They changed the Sabbath. We don't have a Sabbath anymore. We got a day off. The Seventh-day Adventist Church has shown itself to be an evil church who without any thought conformed to every whim of this evil German regime in World War II. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is simply evil men and women in suits with Bibles in their hands.